They told you Stoicism came from Greece, but they never told you the whole story. They never told you that before the marble columns of Athens, before Zeno ever opened his mouth on a painted porch, there were black sages in the temples of Kemet, walking in silence, mastering the self, aligned with Ma'at. You see, history wasn't just written by the victors, it was renamed by them. Ideas, philosophies, sacred wisdom, all borrowed, all stamped with new names. But the roots, they were African, ancient, divine. This isn't just about giving credit, it's about telling the truth. It's about remembering what was forgotten, stolen, and repackaged. Because the calm face of the Stoic wasn't born in Greece. It was first carved in stone, in temples that lined the Nile. In Kemet, they didn't call it Stoicism, they called it Ma'at. Balance, harmony, truth, divine order. This wasn't a philosophy, they lived it. It wasn't a debate in scrolls, it was discipline in motion. It was soul in stillness. Long before Epictetus spoke of enduring hardship with grace, the Kemetic priest was fasting in solitude, stilling his mind, mastering the tongue, and aligning his spirit with the natural rhythms of the universe. They didn't fight emotion with coldness, they respected it, then ruled over it. Because power without control isn't power at all. The Greeks studied there, Pythagoras, Plato, even Zeno. They stood at the feet of African sages. They walked the temple grounds as students, not masters. They took what they learned, returned home, and gave it Greek names. Stoicism became a Western badge of honor. But at its heart, it was Kemet's way of life. The Stoic man who holds his ground in chaos? He's the echo of the silent sage, the Egyptian scribe who watched emotion rise but didn't let it move him, who could feel deeply but act deliberately. The more you study Stoicism, the more you find its shadow in Kemet. The same reverence for silence, the same discipline of thought, the same focus on self-mastery, not self-pity. Kemet didn't just teach philosophy, it taught alignment. Emotional restraint wasn't suppression, it was a doorway to higher awareness. You didn't just master your emotions to be tough. You mastered them to hear what your spirit was saying beneath the noise. They trained the heart like a muscle. They watched every word. They fasted not for show, but for sharpening. The sage walked with his back straight and his words few. Not because he feared emotion, but because he understood it was a tide, and he was the rock. This is where the West misunderstood. They thought calm was cold. They mistook restraint for repression. But in Kemet, restraint was sacred. You could burn inside and still choose peace. You could feel betrayal and still not betray your path. You could know pain and still speak life. They lived that. When Zeno taught that emotion clouds reason, he echoed a truth already carved into temple walls. When Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events," he unknowingly confirmed what Africans already practiced. And yet today, few know the source. Stoicism is printed in books. Ma'at is buried in memory, but memory is rising. And those who walk in truth are helping it rise. The sage isn't always loud. He doesn't need titles. He doesn't need credit, because his strength isn't in the spotlight. It's in the shadow. It's in the stillness. It's in the choice to remain grounded. While the world is trying to pull him out of position, he doesn't react. He reflects. He doesn't chase attention. He carries intention. And that is the root of true Stoicism, born not in the West, but in the silence of Black wisdom. Born not in books, but in breath, in balance, in discipline. Born in the temples of Kemet, born in us. He doesn't chase validation. Because what is validation from a world that's still catching up to truths we've known since before time was counted? He walks light, but his presence weighs heavy, because he's aligned. And alignment speaks louder than ambition ever could. He's not out to prove, he's out to preserve. To protect the flame the ancestors lit before his name was ever spoken. That's why he pauses before reacting. That's why he guards his energy. Because his purpose isn't up for auction, and his peace non-negotiable. You see, the world wants you emotionally predictable, quick to respond, quick to defend, quick to rage. Because once you're triggered, they've already won. A man ruled by impulse is a man without direction. But a man who feels everything and still moves with clarity, that man can't be manipulated, he can't be owned. That's the original Stoic. Not some marble statue in a European museum. Not some cold philosopher sipping wine in a toga. The original Stoic was a black man who knew how to move in a hostile world without letting that world move him. He prayed in silence, fasted in private, healed without applause, and led with the type of stillness that shook empires. That's what Ma'at produces. A spirit that bends to no trend, a soul that can stand in chaos and not let the chaos enter him. That's what they saw in Kemet. That's why they came. That's why they studied, and that's why they rebranded. Because the West didn't just borrow Stoicism. It colonized it. It stripped the rhythm out of it. It removed the breath, the culture, the sacred intention. What was once soul deep became surface level. What was once ceremony became syllables. But truth always finds its way back, because we're remembering now. We're waking up. We're not just reading books about Stoicism. We're tracing the roots back to the Nile, back to the source, back to a people who already mastered the art of staying grounded in a world that tries to shake you. And that's what consciousness and motion is about. It's not just information, it's restoration. It's not just knowledge, it's memory waking up. It's the spirit of Ma'at whispering through every generation that forgot who they were. It's the ancestors reminding us that stillness is power, that restraint is royalty, that when you know who you are, you don't chase noise, you walk in truth. And if the world calls that Stoicism, fine. But we know where it came from. You want to know what Stoicism looks like in modern life? It's you waking up early, not because you feel like it, but because discipline overrides desire. It's paying your dues in silence. Fixing what breaks, providing where others complain. Holding your tongue when you could burn the whole room down with a sentence. It's restraint when disrespect shows up. Not because you're soft, but because you know your energy is sacred. It's staying on your purpose even when support is silent. Because you don't need applause, you need alignment. And that mindset? That's Kemet. That's Ma'at. That's original Stoicism in motion. Not a trend, not a quote, a way of being. That's why you don't broadcast your struggles, because struggle doesn't define you, it shapes you. That's why you don't react to every emotion, because emotion is information, not instruction. And that's why the ancestors moved differently. They didn't suppress their humanity, they elevated it. They knew that peace wasn't the absence of pressure. It was the mastery of it. You feel it all, but you don't fold. You hear the noise, but you don't lose focus. You take hits, but you don't give your power away, and that makes you dangerous. Not to the world, but to the systems that count on you being impulsive, emotional, distracted. Because a man who has mastered himself is free. And a free man cannot be ruled. This mindset doesn't stop with you. Because real mastery isn't about control. It's about continuity. It's about passing down something unshakable. Something your kids, your community, your lineage can build on. That's why the sages of Kemet trained the next generation. Not just in rituals, but in rhythm, in restraint, in remembrance. They didn't just raise children, they raised consciousness. And that's what you're doing now. Every time you pause before reacting, you're reprogramming a pattern. Every time you choose patience over pride, you're teaching your future family what power really looks like. Every time you stay silent when the world is baiting your voice, you're choosing legacy over ego. Because this isn't about you anymore. It's about what your name will mean 50 years from now. It's about whether your story was one of impulse or intention. It's about whether your presence brought panic or peace. And the ones who shaped that before you? They didn't have titles. They didn't go viral. They fasted, they meditated, they built. They were misunderstood, laughed at, resisted. But they knew what time it was, and so do you. Because even in this world of noise, you still hear the quiet voice within. Even surrounded by chaos, you still feel the pull towards stillness. Even in the face of disrespect, you still walk like you're being watched by something higher. That's not weakness, that's training. That's thousands of years of sacred memory pushing through your veins. That's the spirit of Ma'at keeping you upright while the world bends. This isn't just about staying calm. This is about returning to your original self. Because the world doesn't need more men who react. It needs more men who remember. Men who walk in stillness, not because they're numb, but because they're aligned. Men who guard their peace like a temple. Men who choose wisdom over war unless war becomes wisdom. Men who can feel fire in their chest and still speak light through their lips. That's a different kind of strength. That's not learned from a book. That's inherited, lived, earned. And the ancestors knew they weren't waiting for applause. They were too focused on maintaining the balance of the universe. One breath at a time. One word at a time. One decision at a time. And that balance, it's calling you now. Through every situation that tries to shake you. Through every emotion that wants to own you. Through every voice that tries to pull you out of alignment. Because the real Stoic doesn't just survive pressure, he refines under it. He doesn't just stay calm. He commands calm by commanding himself. He doesn't silence others, he silences his own storm first. Because if you can control you, nobody else can. And that's the truth systems fear the most. A man who doesn't need approval, who doesn't move on impulse, who doesn't crumble under heat, that man can't be controlled. He walks with intention. He speaks with clarity. He listens more than he talks. And when he does speak, the room adjusts. Not because he's loud, but because he's rooted. Rooted in memory. Rooted in Ma'at. Rooted in a way of life the world forgot, but your spirit never did. You didn't come this far to play small. You didn't endure the fire just to stay quiet in your own power. You came to realign what was broken, to return what was stolen, to rebuild the temple inside yourself first. Because your body is a vessel, your mind is a weapon, and your spirit is ancient. And every time you pause to breathe, every time you speak with intention instead of impulse, every time you feel the pull to lash out but choose discipline instead, you're honoring a lineage that never died. It just got buried beneath noise. This is your resurrection, the rebirth of the sage, the return of the priest, the reawakening of the original Stoic. Not cold, but controlled. Not detached, but discerning. Not emotionless, but in full command of his emotional power. This is who you've always been. Before the trauma, before the conditioning, before they told you power meant aggression, real power looks like you. Still. Shoulders squared, heart calm, eyes focused, spirit aligned. And while the world scrambles for validation and ego, you walk like a god among noise. Because you know this truth, peace is the highest form of power. Stillness is a form of warfare, and discipline is the doorway to divinity. You don't flinch at storms anymore because you've become one. And not the kind that destroys, but the kind that transforms. The world may call it Stoicism, but you know what it really is. It's Ma'at, it's Kemet, it's soul in order, it's spirit in motion. It's you, fully awakened,